Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar hosted by Onebridge and WhereScape titled Don't Overlook Data Warehouse Automation for Critical Data-Driven Projects. This is a 60-minute webinar which includes a product demonstration of WhereScape Red. Thank you again for attending today's webinar. I'm now delighted to introduce you to Andrew Bitterman from Onebridge.
Thanks, Lauren. Good morning, everybody. My name is Andrew Bitterman. I've been in consulting with data and analytics for almost 25 years now. I'm currently a data strategist and senior director here at Onebridge. Want to go to the next slide? So who is Onebridge? Onebridge is a decision intelligence company here in Indiana. We focus on enabling people, process, technology, and data to drive better decisions and better decision making for our clients. We focus really on three things. One would be strategy, then execution and enablement, and really focus on analytics functions within our clients' organizations. In my current role, in addition to doing strategic consulting, I'm also responsible for vetting the many data and analytics companies that are in the market, with the goal of ensuring that we have the best partners to help our customers succeed in their analytics and BI efforts. Today we're going to focus on WhereScape, discuss a bit about why we partner with them, do an actual demo of one of their main platforms, and help you get a deeper understanding of what they offer and why we find them valuable. When you talk about time to value, data warehouse automation floats right to the top. When you want to get value from your data, you don't want to wait 6-12 months to do that. If you're undertaking a new project, if you could do that in a fifth or a sixth of the time, why would you not do that? So that's what we're going to talk about today. So Onebridge, as a partner of WhereScape, provides a complementary professional services. So when you're doing these type of build outs, we provide consultants to help you think through that, understand your use cases, what data sources you care about, those kind of things, and actually do the development with you in WhereScape, make sure that this fits into your larger data strategy. So with all that, I'd like to turn things over to our senior architect in our practice, Stephen ESTEP. He was heavily involved in vetting this in the first place when we talked through it. I think he has some really interesting experience with it and can shed some light on the value that he sees as well. So with that, I will turn it over to Stephen.
All right, well, thank you very much for that, Andrew. For everyone here on the call, welcome. My name is Stephen ESTEP, and I am a senior data architect for Onebridge. I built my first database back in 1983 and my first data warehouse in 2006. My entire career has been focused on building databases, transferring data, developing complex transformations, and building data warehouses. Next screen, please. I recently joined Onebridge, and I'm working on a project to build a client's brand new data warehouse. Like every other data warehouse, I'm challenged with ingesting multiple data sources across a large number of legal entities. As part of my effort, I'm evaluating different tools to help accelerate development and design. In an effort to sort through the noise, Onebridge has a history of evaluating many tools to find which best fits a client's needs. Onebridge has recently partnered with WhereScape, and I jumped at the opportunity to evaluate WhereScape for this project. Next screen. Historically, my typical data warehouse involves writing database code to extract, load, and transform data. Rarely do I have the opportunity to use an ETL tool. The database code I write has the same structure for every table I read, create, and load. Primary differences are in the names of the tables and columns and in the data type. I usually create a template and then update the code for the current table and column names. I make mistakes sometimes. Most of my errors occur because of typos of the names and data types. Also typical when I deliver the solution, the user has last-minute changes. This involves finding all of the affected code segments and making each change the source from the source all the way down to the target warehouse. For documentation, as a developer, documentation is usually an afterthought. To be honest, I hate documentation. Next. In my evaluation of WhereScape, they presented the following benefits. I can use drag and drop to select source and target tables to work with. WhereScape reads the source metadata to build ETL code. I don't need to use the default data type sizes recommended by an ETL tool, and then update based upon my sources data types. WhereScape can build my ETL code from default templates. These templates are used to create target tables and to load these target tables. WhereScape offers the opportunity to create a custom template, which will blend with source metadata to create my own custom code. Speed of development. WhereScape can accelerate development. Through agile processes, we can add a source column and easily recreate the code to rebuild and reload target tables. WhereScape says we can build target tables and queries 8 times faster. I find that to be true. If our client changes their target database platform, WhereScape can change the code template to leverage the database language and their new database platform. Documentation. WhereScape builds the documentation listing the source tables and columns, the target tables and columns, and the path to data table. Next screen, please. So let's discuss what I found when Onebridge evaluated WhereScape Red. As you can see from the screen, WhereScape offers us the ability to select source and target tables and drag and drop them between frame sections of the user interface. You don't connect objects to objects to build the flow. Rather, the flow is understood to be from load to stage to dimensions and facts. With each table and column, you can open configuration screens to fine-tune your design. WhereScape is great at reading the source objects and data types and ensuring the target tables use the same metadata. It's highly configurable. We found the development environment as such. You can define rules for setting target table names, like appending the name of the source or defaulting the schema. You can use similar rules for setting the names of the stored procedures used to insert and update your target data. Some of the development frames can have the color of the objects defaulted. There appear to be many more settings we have yet to discover. Next screen. Agile. Adding a source column really is as simple as selecting the column and clicking menu options. These rebuild code to change your target table definitions and rebuild your code to load data. Adding a new source doesn't require more work than used in the original design. In fact, WhereScape updates scheduling seamlessly. You don't have to study dependencies to add the new source into the right spot for the schedule. Typical data warehouse design is to use kill and fill ETL processes until you determine performance enhancements are needed to load your data. WhereScape offered a modification to the code template to change the data load easily from kill and fill to incremental. So for the screen we've got here, documentation. Wanted to show you sort of a sample of what we got here. So our first sample here shows you the source of the data warehouse column. You can use WhereScape documentation to graphically see and track back the source or sources of a data warehouse dimension table. Note how the target table on the far right shows 2 source tables on the far left and the steps needed to get the data to the target. Next screen, please. Just as you have the ability to go backwards, you have the ability to go forwards to find all the target tables which use a specific source. So note the single source table on the far left, which is used to set values of the fact and dimension tables on the far right. These graphics are automatically built and are invaluable when studying changes to your source or finding the sources of your data warehouse. Next. As we evaluate WhereScape, we received excellent support to our analysis. Mike routinely set up meetings to review our technical questions and to be sure all our questions were answered. When we had additional questions around best practices and complex data warehouse solutions, Mike scheduled additional meetings with technical. I found WhereScape to be not just an ETL tool. I found it to be a tool to help me accelerate the building of my ETL code. This is done by combining templates, default or my own, with the source metadata to build code for creating and loading data warehouse tables. This accelerates completing a data warehouse and can also allow me to add a source column to the client's target data warehouse right in front of the executive. And now I'll hand over the presentation to Mike.
Thank you, Stephen. A little bit about WhereScape today, and then we'll get started with a day in the life. So a little bit about WhereScape. We started as a small consulting shop when data warehousing really started exploding about 20 years ago. We would build out data warehouses for customers, and at the time it was very tedious, and it still is today without automation. So they started developing tools to automate. They're building out a data warehouse for a large multinational bank. It got done very, very quickly. So the bank asked how, we were able to get that project done so quickly. We shouldn't have been able to get it done so quick with the size of the team and, how big that project was. The code was very standardized. It looks really good. And they asked what our secret sauce was. And, at the time we told them that we had built out some software to automate the repetitive tasks that they were doing for every customer. And the bank said, great, how much for that software? So that got us thinking maybe we should be in the software business. The rest is history. We have more than 1,000 customers around the globe that represent companies of all sizes, small, mid-market, enterprise organizations. We have more than 30 customer stories told on WhereScape.com that detail project successes, including time, cost savings, process improvement. One thing that I like to tell clients, prospects, we're 20 years old as an organization, so we've been evangelizing about the benefits of data automation for some time, but I think now it's crossing into the chasm and becoming more mainstream as companies. They're starting to see those results that the digital native companies achieve with automation. And, they're realizing as well that there's a better way to work than hand coding, green screens, and working weekends. One thing that I like to stress is we are not an ETL tool. Other tools' capabilities stop at bringing data into the database. We're a full development lifecycle automation tool. So what this means is we automate the creation of tables, dimensions, facts, views, documentation, everything in addition to ETL. Second, our tool is driven by metadata, or data about the data. So when a change is made at any point of the development process, that metadata changes, and all the corresponding code at all other steps is automatically changed as well. Okay. ETL, great at getting the data from A to B, but we do the other 80% and actually build out the entire data warehouse and eliminate 95% of the manual tasks associated with it after ETL. So I'll give the participants just a second to take a look at this slide. It should hopefully be a bit familiar. This is what we found to be the conventional way of building out a data warehouse, or the data warehouse lifecycle, if you will. Typically, if you're building a new warehouse, you'll start gathering requirements from the business, building out a framework, and maybe doing some type of profiling or modeling. Some companies are doing a model first approach, and some are just jumping straight into the architecture. And then you have your ETL mapping, developers using tools like SSIS and pushing things into deployment, and hopefully there's some time to do some documentation and data lineage in the end. So you work your way all the way up that staircase, if you will, and you present that back to the business, and most of the time they say, fantastic, now that I've seen what you've built, I have a better idea of what I actually need, and then could you go back and make these changes? And most of the time, those gentlemen, those ladies expect that can be done in a matter of minutes or hours, and typically those projects they're asking for, they take a lot longer. So you start all your way back at the bottom, working your way up again. So some of the issues that we saw with this conventional way are just slow speed of delivery. The business executives, they want to be data driven and make decisions quickly. They need the data like yesterday. But the IT team says, hey, we're strapped for resources. We don't have enough time or people to get this done at the speed you'd like. And, the IT team, we want to do things right. Second is the second issue, just messy change management, right? So you're working your way all the way up through the staircase. There's a lot of opportunity when you're changing through people or tools for just some things to fall through the cracks, or maybe some custom scripting needed to be done. And that just adds a lot of additional effort and work, especially when there's not metadata communication between tools or strong documentation as well between people. And then lastly, when we talk to analysts that are following this traditional methodology, the analysts or the end users end up saying, hey, you know, we spend upwards of 30 or 40% of our day just trying to map out where did this data come from that I'm looking at, what's happened to it along the way since it came from the source, and what kind of transformations were applied and things like that. So if this was a staircase, we like to refer to WhereScape as an escalator. So a day in the life. So you're still taking the same number of steps that you need to, but now you're able to do it a whole lot faster. And our secret sauce is that we're built on a robust metadata repository, and we're using best practice templates to write target native SQL. So if you're on SQL Server, we're writing T-SQL. If you're on Snowflake, we're writing SnowSQL. And our tool translates that syntax for you. So if you're on SQL Server today and you decide Snowflake is nice and you want to move in that direction, obviously there's difference in the way the SQL is written in Snowflake. Our tool will help translate that for you and does a lot of that work for you. So we see developers, they're telling us they're about 8 to 12 times more efficient. Also, we find that because we're metadata driven, it's really easy to iterate, and now you can stay agile because now it's done very quick because all of these changes are captured in the metadata to roll back versions. And typically you can make those changes live in front of your end users instead of spinning up an entire new project. And lastly, our analysts report because the documentation is automatically generated through the metadata, they're able to save just a ton of time because it's all presented in front of them as to where the data came from, what kind of transformations have been applied, etc. So no longer is the team having to worry about going back and putting in additional documentation. And Brian will show you how that works during the demo. The last slide before I give it to Brian today, things that people like about our tool and things that pop up is we're not black boxed. So everything within our tool, it's very transparent. You can edit the code, you can edit all the templates, you can see exactly what's happening behind the hood. The second thing is security. So we don't do ETL, we do ELT. So we push everything up to your target database to do the transformations. What that means on our end is we're not using any proprietary engine or ETL code or anything like that. Everything's being captured in our metadata and being pushed to Snowflake or SQL Server, for example, for that execution. So all the data lives within your target database. WhereScape does not house any of the data itself. And all of our security is also passed through from your target database. So whatever kind of authentication you have set up in SQL Server or Snowflake, for example, passes in through WhereScape. So from a security standpoint, there's no fear around what does WhereScape do with my data? Are you storing my data, etc. So that sums up my portion today. I'm going to pass it over to Brian Thomas, Solution Architect, for a demo of our flagship automation tool, WhereScape Red.
Well, thanks, Mike. So my name is Brian Thomas, and I don't have a slide with my background or anything like that. What I have is just this the actual application to show you. So I believe there was a question here. Someone posted that, so does WhereScape also do the ETL, or is a separate ETL tool required? So we do the ETL as well. What Mike was alluding to is that we are not just an ETL tool. We help you with your entire development process. I believe that's what he was thinking with that. So just to, hopefully that answers your question. So now I've been doing data warehousing since the 90s. So I've done a lot of data warehousing. I have been a 20-year DBA, everything from DB2 to Oracle to SQL Server. So I've done a lot of data warehouses on a lot of different platforms. So I'm using SQL Server here for this example that I'll be going through, but it's the same process whether you're going to Snowflake or whether you're going to Redshift or Oracle. it should be the same process. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this high-level walkthrough of what our product does. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to build out a star schema for us from a sample database. Just take a few tables. So just to give you an idea of what we're going to be doing here, to show you how you can take from your source and end up in a star schema at the end. So the way our product works, and this is WhereScape Red, this is just one of our 2 products. This is our developer product. So what we do is over here on the left, you have your data source. So you can extract from pretty much any kind of data source, including a traditional DBMS platform, or maybe even an XML or JSON text file, really anything. And on the far right, this is where your BI tools are. So this is your Click, your Tableau, your Power BI, that sort of thing. We don't do anything on the visualization side. So what we do is the heavy lifting between those 2 layers. We start with extracting from your source. So the first thing you do is you land the data from your source into your target platform, making a one-to-one copy of your tables, which we call load tables. So if your target is Oracle or SQL Server, the first thing we do is we land that data into your platform. And then the next thing we do after the data is landed into your target data warehouse is we start applying rules to that data. Maybe they could be as simple as joining 2 tables, or maybe very complex, like maybe you're building a budgeting algorithm that has to go through multiple serial calculations. But the idea is to prepare the data using what we call stage tables here. So then we prepare the data and then we load it into your foundation layer. So the foundation layer could be a data store, a data lake, a data vault if you're into a data vault design, or it could be an Inman third normal form or even a conform dimensional model. But then we take that data and then we start applying rules to it to build out your star schema again. So you could do business transformations with some tables, or maybe just building some views. But the idea is to build out your star schema, or if you're doing a data vault, maybe you want to build out your business vault here. And then optionally, we also allow you to build a semantic layer. So if you need to build views or performance or indexes or aggregates, OLAP cubes, that sort of thing. And then what happens is your dashboard users would connect into your data warehouse. So that's the idea. And like I said, what I'm going to be doing is taking data from source and end up building a star schema here very quickly. So while you are building all of these items, the stage tables, the load tables, your data vault, your data store, your star schema, your dimensions and facts, we're capturing all of that in metadata. So the metadata is kind of like our secret sauce. So we do a lot of stuff happens because of the metadata. We're able to generate code, generate dependency diagrams, do impact analysis, all because of that. And we also have a self-documenting feature, like Stephen said. That's one of the things that draws people to our tool. As Mike was saying, we're a full life scale. We do the whole gamut. So including the documentation. I know as a data warehouse developer, I never had time to do documentation when I was in the midst of building out a data warehouse. So we have a self-documenting feature at the end of each development cycle, at the end of each sprint even. A developer can push a button and generate documentation. And then we also provide a scheduler. So now, why don't I get in and show you our tool. So this is the client piece. We're a kind of a client server application. You connect from the client to your source systems and to your data warehouse and to our metadata. So on the left hand side, this is a object browser. It browses the object in your data warehouse. On the on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, this is the physical browser. You can browse both your data warehouse and your source. You can do analysis if you need to. You can pull up columns that are in it. You can even look at data if you need to through our tool. So why don't I show you how to move data over. So we're going to take this and I'm going to build a load table. So this is kind of like the map of what we're going to do. So the first thing is to create a load table. So we can easily do that. We're going to take our loads, and I'm going to take this customer and I'm going to just drag it to the middle. And what happens then is we have wizards that pop up. So I think of this as WhereScape does automation two different ways. The first way is from a development standpoint. It automates your process so that you can kind of like forget or not have to worry about certain things like your naming standards. So we have naming standards here. You can match up with your customer's naming standards. We have target locations. So you can think, I want my load and my stage tables to go into a certain schema, and maybe my star schema, my facts and dimensions, or maybe my raw data vault will go in different locations. And then a third thing that we do as far as the automation process is we do data type mappings for you. Now I'm doing a very simple example here, just SQL Server to SQL Server, but if you're going to Snowflake, we can easily do that data type mappings for you. Or if you're going to Redshift or SQL Server data warehouse, Azure data warehouse, we can do those data type mappings for you, another part of the automation. So then we're just going to go ahead and create and load that table. So now we have the data loaded into your data warehouse level. So we're very much transparent. You can see exactly what was executed here. We have a create table statement. We grabbed any extended property comments to bring them along as part of the documentation. We truncated the table we inserted into. It's very, very transparent what we do. We're not a black box, so that you can see that. And then we can display the data, and you can easily look at the data and see that we brought it in, and it looks very similar to the data that we saw when we looked at the source system. So that's the first step. The first step is to create these load tables. Now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to start building my star schema. So as far as customers go, we don't have a lot of business transformation or data transformations we have to do. So I can go ahead and skip these steps and go straight to building my star schema for this. So I'm going to take this customer table and I'm going to browse my data warehouse. Like I said, through the physical browser over here, I can look and see in my stage, I have that customer's demo. So this is the table that I just created. So we can see this. So I can take this and create a dimension directly from it. So I can pull it across. Now we'd have the automation kicking in again. It does dim underscore. So it knows it's a dimension. Dimensions belong in the data warehouse, not in the staging area. So it does that. So I don't really have to think about this going forward. I know it's going to name it properly. I know it's going to put it in the right target. And all that is customizable by you. So now, when I did data warehousing 20 years ago, we spent weeks, if not months, discussing how we're going to track changes. And so I'm going to build a slowly changing dimension here, because that's one of those things we finally agree that that's the right thing to do. So how we build a slowly changing dimension is we come in through the wizard. Now we have to select the business key column, because that's important, and I'm a good developer, and I talked to the analyst and they told me customer ID was the right one. And then as a type 2 dimension, you're going to track changes. So we just need to tell it what fields we want to track changes on. And I'm just going to use address down to country for now. And so we select that, and now we've loaded our table. So now you can see we've built one of the dimensions in our star schema. So If I display the data, well, first of all, you can see we have the load date, the start date, the end date, the current flag, and the version. Those are the type 2 dimension fields that are in here. And you'll also notice that we added constraints and we added indexes automatically for us, part of that automation that I don't have to think about anymore. And if we look at the data, you can see we added a 0 record row, and here's those type 2 dimension fields. But the nice thing is that we wrote a bunch of code by clicking on a few buttons. We have 357 lines of code here that that we created at the click of a button. And the truth is that this procedure here is much prettier than anything I would have built when I was doing data warehousing. I didn't have time to put documentation at the top or create inline comments and indent it and all this stuff that looks so beautiful. Now, maybe I would have gone back if I had some time, I would do that. But most of the time when I was building a data warehouse, I'd run around with my hair on fire just trying to get things done because of the constant changing of what was going on. So here we go. Here we have the address, the city, the region, the postal code, and the country that are all in here. So that's just an example of a type 2 dimension. Now, we talk about being agile as something that everyone needs to do these days. Data warehouses change. It might have changed in an hour, in a day, in a week, in a month, in 6 years. So, but it's going to be a change. So the analysts come back to us and say, hey, we need to track phone number as well. That was not included as part of it. So this is how easy it is to do. Maybe you're sitting down with your analysts right then, but we can come in and I can rebuild my update procedure, making it set based. I don't need to change anything, but under change detection, I can add phone number. And you know what? They're probably going to ask for fax number next week too. So I'm just going to go ahead and add that as a change detection. So now we've not had to worry about anything. If I was doing this without WhereScape, I would have to go find the code, check it out, determine what indexes were affected. If I'm lucky, I wrote this code and I understand it. If not, I might have to figure out exactly how it was coded. But with WhereScape, all we have to do is it went in and changed our constraints, dropped the constraints, dropped the indexes, rebuilt all of these, and did everything for us. And if we go look at that code, we can view that code again, and we can see that maybe I don't remember what I did. Maybe I was not the one who wrote this code. So we have tools to help you with that. So we're going to view, we version everything automatically for you. So I'm going to go back and grab a couple of versions ago, and then I'm going to compare that. And so we can see that there were changes made to the documentation at the top, looking for the little arrows, and we come down and, oh, here's some lines that were added for the phone number and the fax number. And if I go down a little further, here's some that were removed and changed. So you can easily go in and notice what was changed. But that's how easy it is with type 2 dimensions. So I was just talking with someone yesterday, and they're like, these are so hard, we haven't even started using type 2 dimensions, and you can do it that easily. Yes, we want to know more about this product, if nothing else, for that type 2 dimension. So one of the things we do is, let me show you some simple transformations. If there's any more questions, I think what we'll do is we'll get to that at the end. If we have time, we'll go through and add some more questions. So if you'll notice on here on this document, one of the things I did not bring up was a retrofit. So we have the ability to take any existing data warehouse you have and ingest your ETL tool, ingest your models, your objects, that sort of thing, into our metadata so that you're documenting it, and it includes, it's part of the process. So that's one thing I forgot to mention earlier, was that that retrofit feature. I wanted to make sure you knew about that. So so now let me build one of these stage tables for us. So part of our star schema is going to be orders. So I'm going to take my orders and my orders detail table, and I'm going to join those together, and then I'm going to add a calculated column, and then we'll push that through into our fact table to give you an idea of what we're going to do. So I'm going to create a stage table here. I'm going to go back to, you know what, there's a lot of tables here. I'm just going to pull up my filter, kind of filter out some. So I'm going to take orders and create a stage table from that. Again, automation kicks in. So we're going to do that. I'm just going to say okay, and then I'm going to take orders detail, and I'm going to add a few fields. We're going to add product ID, and we'll add unit price and quantity. So we'll do that. Now at this point, we haven't created the table yet, but if we do an impact analysis and look at our trackback diagram, WhereScape knows that we're joining two tables. So we just have to explain how the join happens with those. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create this table. Now we've created a staging table, and it did the same thing. It grabbed any comments that were on there and pulled them across that are going to end up ultimately in our documentation. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and build that update procedure. So just like we had in that dimension, we have to build for a stage table. Now this looks a little bit different because stage tables have different parts to them. So we're going to make sure that this is set based. We are not going to add any parameters here, but this is something if you want to do high watermark loads, those sort of things. If you want to do incremental loads, you can put parameters in here and easily do that. But this is our joins table. So we're going to join these two, and they're joined on order ID. And then we can look at that and make sure that join looks okay. If it is, we'll just click finish. If not, you can edit it. So now I just need to execute that update procedure and now display the data. And we can see that now we have joined those two tables. So there's really not a lot in here other than we're joining two tables. So it's kind of simple here. So what I'd like to do next is I would like to go ahead and add that new column. So like I said, it's all about being agile. So we've created it, we've created the documentation, we've created the update procedure, and now there's a change that happens. How quickly can we handle that change as a data warehouse analyst, as a data warehouse developer? How quickly can we integrate a change in? So let me go ahead and just add a column. I'm going to call this order value. And we're going to say this is price times quantity. And we're going to say this is a money type. And because we're adding it, we're going to allow nulls, make it numeric and additive. And then as far as the transformation goes, we have things to help you to be able to do your ETL work, to be able to do transformations. So you can either cut and paste your own transformations in here. But me, I spent most of my time when I was building data warehouses chasing my own tail, my own typos, trying to track down what they were. So I love the idea of a tool that creates the code for me that works the first time. I'm not going to probably, I would much prefer to click things these days. So I'm going to go into order detail. I'm going to take price, and I can just paste that column name, take that away as being a typo, and paste in the column for that. So now we have this new column on here. So let me go ahead and create the table again. So that's what needs to happen because we added a new column. I need to create the table. So what I'm going to do is regenerate, and then I'm going to execute that code. So understand this is in a development environment. So I really don't need to worry about the data that's there. That's why I'm recreating it. We have other ways to take care of production things, so you don't lose your data and have to reload it when you're pushing this into production. But for this demo, so now we have our new data. There's the order value column that we added. So it was very simple to do, to iterate through, and you can see that WhereScape is dealing with all those mundane tasks associated with this change that you as a developer would have to do otherwise. So that's really what I like about it, this productivity boost. All these small little enhancements added up across an entire project is how you end up with 5 to 8 times your productivity in using this tool. So of course, the next step is to load the fact table. So if we go back and we look at that original diagram that we had here, so we've built a stage table, and so now we're wanting to build a fact table. So the basis of a fact table is we need to do a few more things before we can build the fact table. We need to do the lookups. So we'll need surrogate keys. And we recommend doing that in the stage table as well. So now the key to this is having a design of some kind that you're shooting for. So one of the things that Onebridge can help out is if you don't know exactly what your data warehouse needs to look like, Onebridge or someone like that can come in and help you to do the design of your data warehouse. So I'm working toward a design now. So now, if I'm going to do these lookups, I need to figure out what I need. So right now we have created one dimension. And so we need to think about our other dimensions as well. So if I look at this and I see we have product ID, so we probably need a product dimension. We have order date, require date, ship date, so we're going to need some date dimensions as well. So what I've done is I've already created some dimensional views, some role-playing dimensions on top of these, so that you can see I have order date, require date, ship date. It's very easy to create. Let me just create our product dimension real quick. I'm going to take that product table, drag it across, automation kicks in. We're going to make this normal. I'm going to rebuild the update procedure, set based, make this product ID, and it's that simple how we can turn this into a simple dimension. So now let me take this stage and let me go ahead and put those lookups in there. So let me refresh my data warehouse, and I'm going to just look at my dimensions. So I'm going to take that customer dimension and I'm going to add this as a surrogate key. So if we bring this across, we know we're not looking at dragging the whole dimension. We just need that surrogate key. We're going to do the same thing with product. And then I'm going to add order date and ship date. So now we have our 4 surrogate keys added. So now we need to rebuild this table one more time. So again, we're going to quickly do this. I'm just going to recreate the table with the new field because I need to specify the lookup logic before we can load it. So let me go ahead and rebuild that update procedure one more time. The joins are the same. Now, because we have surrogate keys in there, it knows, oh, you're looking at dimension lookups. So how do I match with your stage table and your dimension? So it goes through and matches those up if the column names are the same. And customer ID, oh, you know, I forgot this is a type 2 dimension. It needs more information. So WhereScape is going to catch those little mistakes that I would have made along the way. It says you need a date to help do this. I'm going to say order date is what we were told. A product ID looks like it matches, order date matches, and ship date matches. So now I just need to execute this update procedure, and now we have our stage table ready. So now I just need to use that stage table as a basis to build my fact table. So let me come down to fact table. Let me change my filter to stage. Make sure it's refreshed, and there's my stage table. So I can take my customer key and use it to start creating my fact table. So automation kicks in, and I'm just going to add my other surrogate keys, products, order, ship date. I'm going to add my measures then, because what's a fact table without measures? So I'm going to add that unit price and quantity, and I think I'll go ahead and add that order value, that calculated field that we added. So now if we look and do an impact analysis, we can actually see that WhereScape understands that we're joining these tables, even though the fact table hasn't been created. In fact, if we can go in and look and even do a star schema and see, this is what we built. We built some dimensions, and we have a fact table in the middle. So this is what we're shooting for. And so now let's go ahead and create that table. Again, it's even dragging our extended property comments from the source system all the way through. So now I'm going to build that update procedure for the fact table. So we don't have it built at this point. So we're going to build it. It's saying what makes this unique. I'm just going to say customers and orders. And so now I can execute it. Execute the update procedure. So if we display the data, we can see that we have a very simple fact table. We have gone from nothing, just our source system, into this star schema. So what we did was we created a dimension. We created a type 2 dimension for customers. We created that product dimension. We went through a couple of iterations of that dim customers and showing the agility of making changes to a type 2. I showed the code, how we versioned it. We created indexes, and then we joined two tables into a stage table and created a calculated column. We did all those lookups, and then we loaded the fact table with everything, and everything is versioned and documented and behind the scenes. So now let me show you that documentation real quick. So while we have a few minutes, so we're going to take, and so we're at the end of a sprint. We've created this very simple star schema. And so now I can go in and create the documentation with a push of a button. It's HTML files. So I can easily create this, and I can either show it when it's done in a browser. You can put it out there on your intranet site since it's HTML files, put it in your wiki, whatever you need to do, but I'm just gonna, for simplicity's sake, I'm just gonna show it inside here. So we have two types of documentation that get created: what is in the data warehouse and how it was built. So let's look at this. So we're going to, I'm going to drill down and look at the fact table. So this is one that was generated before, where I filled out some business rules, some business things on here. But basically, you're looking at measures, attributes, comments. There's a purpose, concept, grain in there. There's a star schema on what this looks like. And there's even a place for examples, so that will cut down on those phone calls for you. And then we also include a glossary. So if your business users want to know what birth date is, they can go and look in this and realize it's for dimension employees, not for customers. So they can't use it for something like mailing out a coupon on a customer's birth date or something like that. So the second kind of documentation is the technical documentation. So if we go and look at that same fact table, we can see it still has the purpose and the concept and the grain, but we also include the update procedure. So if you want to see the procedure that was written, you can easily go look at that. We can also look at any host scripts if you need to do some things. If we need to drill into the other dimensions, I can then look at the dimension and see what is in the order date dimension. So, and then if we look at the columns, we can see the source table and the source column for each column, whether it's a business key or not. So, and then there's our fact table. And then we also have your track back diagram to show that it went from orders to load orders to stage orders to fact orders, and then of course any indexes you have created. So that's our documentation. So if we have any questions?
Yes, we do. I think we have 8 minutes left. And Brian, while you're still sharing your screen, we might have time for this one. It's how do I take this and deploy it to production?
Well, that's a great question. So let me, hold on. I lost it. Somehow I lost it. Okay, so that's a great question. Let me show you how we deploy this to production. So I've been doing all of this in a subject area here called sales. So if you have like sprint 1, sprint 2, sprint 3, you can join it up in these. And so what we would do is I could very easily take this and deploy this, build it out and build a job to execute it later, or I can build an application to deploy this into production. So if we do this, we build an application, and what happens is you can add objects and remove objects. So you can say, I'm gonna say this is for Onebridge, and the application version 1.0, and so I can build this, I can add objects. Here's all the objects that we created today during this demonstration. If I want to add some other things, I can add them as well if I need to delete them. But then this creates a bunch of files. They're called WST files. And then you would execute these via our administration tool on your test or your production system, and then that would load it into the metadata, and then that is how you push it out to production. So that's a very good question.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, we will pull up our questions slide at this time so we can have our contact information up for all of you to view. And then we do have time for just a few more questions. So the next one is there ever a time where a company is not ready for WhereScape on the first day? If so, what does this process look like?
I can speak to that. This is Andrew. You really want to have your data strategy in place, understand the value that you're trying to get out of your warehouse. So it's not only ready for WhereScape, it's are you ready for a warehouse, period. WhereScape's just going to make things faster, right? So the idea is you should have some sort of business value associated with the insight you're going to get from your warehouse, period, before you go to build a warehouse, regardless if you're using WhereScape or data management, maturity, those kind of things, and then understanding what are your analytics needs and mapping those back to use cases for building your warehouse, and then using WhereScape to accelerate that.
Great, thank you. Next question is, There's a lot of talk about Snowflake right now. Are they a competitor or do they complement WhereScape? What's that relationship look like for WhereScape and Snowflake?
Yeah, I can take that one too. They're complementary, right? So Snowflake is just a warehousing technology. I mean, it's not just a warehousing technology, it's a very good one. Warehouse as a service, but again, it's a target for WhereScape. So WhereScape's just going to accelerate, again, deploying your warehouse out into Snowflake, out in one of the three main cloud providers.
And we thank everyone for attending today, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.